On a distant, cold planet, far away from Earth, a young alien girl sat alone among the broken stones and dead trees. Her skin was pale blue, and her big eyes looked sad and tired. She was small and fragile, but her heart was full of hope. Long ago, her people had left her behind, calling her a burden. She did not understand why they left, or where they had gone. All she knew was that she was alone, with nothing but the cold wind and silence around her. Every day, the alien girl woke up hoping to see someone, anyone. But only the empty sky and the sound of strange creatures filled the air. She tried to call for help, but her voice was soft and weak. The stars shone brightly above, but they did not answer her cries. She walked slowly through the ruins of her home, searching for food and water. Sometimes she found strange plants or small animals, but it was never enough. The alien girl missed her family very much. Even though they had left her, she held a small, broken toy close to her chest, the last gift from her mother. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered, "Why did you leave me?" The wind seemed to answer with a cold sigh, but no words came back. She felt a deep sadness, but also a small fire inside her. She wanted to survive, to live, and maybe one day find a friend. One day, as the alien girl rested near a cracked rock, she heard a strange sound. It was soft and slow, like footsteps on dry leaves. She looked up quickly, fear growing inside her heart. Had another creature come to harm her? She hid behind the rock, trembling and hoping to stay unseen. From the distance, a human figure appeared. Walking carefully and looking around, the human wore strange clothes and carried a small bag. His face was kind, but serious, as if he had a mission. The alien girl's heart beat fast. Unsure if this new arrival was friend or enemy, the human stopped near the rock and saw a small movement. He looked closer and saw the frightened alien girl. Instead of fear, his eyes showed concern and kindness. He slowly took out some food from his bag and placed it on the ground. The alien girl watched, confused but hungry after a few moments. She stepped out from behind the rock and took a small bite. The human smiled gently and spoke softly, though she did not understand his words. He pointed to the food and then to himself, saying, "Friend." The alien girl nodded slowly, feeling something she had not felt before, hope, but deep inside. She still wondered, can she trust this human? Is he really kind, or will he leave her like the others? The sun began to set, painting the sky with orange and purple colors. The alien girl and the human sat near each other, watching the stars appear for the first time in a long time. The alien girl did not feel so alone, but the night was dark and full of unknown dangers. Would this human stay by her side? Or would she be left alone again, forgotten by everyone? The lonely alien girl looked up at the stars and whispered, "Please don't leave me." And the human, hearing the soft voice, promised silently to protect her. But no one knew what dangers the night would bring, or how their strange friendship would change both their lives forever. The morning light slowly touched the cold planet's surface, painting soft gold colors over the rocky land. The alien girl woke beside the human who had stayed near her all night. His eyes were still closed, but she could see the gentle rise and fall of his chest. For the first time in many days, she felt safe. She reached out her small hand and touched his arm carefully. The human opened his eyes slowly and smiled softly. "Good morning," he said, in a language she did not know. But his voice was warm and kind. The alien girl looked at him with curiosity and a little fear. She wanted to ask many questions, but words failed her. Instead, she pointed to herself and whispered, "Aliyah," her name. The human nodded and pointed to himself, saying, "Mark." Though they spoke different languages, a new bond started to grow between them. Mark smiled again and pulled out a small device from his bag. He pressed a button, and a soft blue light came out. Strange pictures and sounds appeared on the device. The alien girl watched carefully, fascinated by this magic box. Mark tried to teach her simple words, pointing to objects and repeating their names. Aliyah listened and repeated after him. Though slow, the little progress made her heart happy. 4. The first time, she felt she could talk to someone. Mark gave her food and fresh water, which made her stronger. She felt safe beside him, but deep down, a question still burned in her heart. Why was he here, so far from Earth? And why did he choose to help her, a lonely alien girl forgotten by her own people? As the day passed, Mark and Aliyah explored the area together. Mark used his tools to check the planet's air and ground. Aliyah showed him places she knew where plants grew and where danger lurked. They learned from each other silently, step by step. But the peace did not last long. Suddenly, strange noises came from the nearby forest. A low growl echoed through the trees. Aliyah's eyes widened with fear, and she grabbed Mark's hand tightly out of the shadows. Large creatures with sharp teeth and glowing eyes appeared. They looked hungry and ready to attack. Mark quickly pulled out a small weapon and stood in front of Aliyah. The creatures growled louder and moved closer. Mark's heart pounded, but he did not show fear. He aimed his weapon carefully and fired a warning shot. The creatures paused, but they did not run away. Aliyah's grip on his hand grew tighter. She whispered, "Run," but Mark shook his head. He stepped forward bravely, his voice calm but firm. "Go away," he shouted in his own language. The creatures hesitated. Confused by the strange sounds, Mark fired again, this time closer to the ground. Suddenly, the creatures turned and fled into the forest. Mark sighed deeply and looked at Aliyah. "You're safe now," he said softly. Aliyah's eyes filled with tears of relief and gratitude. She realized this human was different from the others. He did not leave her alone. He did not fear her. Instead, he protected her with his life. The bond between them grew stronger. But the planet was still dangerous, and the night was coming again. As they returned to the small shelter Mark had built, Aliyah asked quietly, "Why do you help me?" Mark looked at her with a serious face. "I help because everyone deserves kindness." He replied. Aliyah thought about his words and felt a new feeling inside. Hope. Maybe she could trust this human. Maybe she was not alone anymore that night. Under the bright stars, Mark and Aliyah sat beside a small fire. Mark shared stories about Earth and humans using pictures and gestures. Aliyah listened with wide eyes, imagining a world far from this lonely planet. She dreamed of a future where she would be safe and loved. But deep inside, a shadow of fear remained. Would her own people come back to find her? Or would other dangers from the dark reach them soon? As the fire crackled, Aliyah looked at Mark and whispered, "Stay with me." Mark smiled and nodded. "I will," he promised, but neither of them knew how their journey would change forever, or how much courage and trust it would take to survive in a world that forgot the alien girl. The cold wind blew hard over the rocky land as night covered the planet in darkness. Aliyah and Mark stayed close together near the small fire that gave them warmth. Suddenly, strange sounds came from the shadows beyond the trees. Aliyah's eyes grew wide with fear, and she whispered, "Something is coming." Mark stood up quickly. Scanning the darkness, his hand moved to the weapon at his side. Ready to protect the alien girl, the strange noises grew louder. Heavy footsteps shaking the ground from the dark forest. Fierce creatures appeared, their eyes glowing red like burning coals. Their sharp teeth showed in cruel snarls as they moved. Closer, Aliyah felt her heart race and squeezed Mark's hand tightly. She had never seen such monsters before, and she knew they were very dangerous. Mark did not hesitate. He picked up a heavy stick nearby and held it like a sword. He looked at Aliyah and said, "Stay close to me. We will get through this." The creatures growled and attacked. Mark swung the stick with all his strength, hitting one creature on its head. It fell to the ground, stunned but not dead. More creatures surrounded them, blocking any escape. Aliyah felt a wave of panic. Her body trembled. But she remembered something her mother once told her: never give up. With courage she did not know she had. She grabbed a small rock and threw it at a creature's eye. The creature screamed and stepped back, giving Mark a moment to push forward. Together, they fought bravely, trying to keep the creatures away. Mark's weapon was low on power. He needed to find a way to escape before they were surrounded. Looking around, he spotted a narrow cave entrance behind the trees. He pulled Aliyah gently and whispered, "This way. Hurry." Aliyah nodded and followed him as fast as she could. The creatures chased after them, snarling and snapping their jaws. Inside the cave, the air was cold and damp. Darkness surrounded them, but it was safer than outside. Mark lit a small flashlight and shone it on the cave walls. They moved deeper inside, trying to hide. Aliyah's heart still pounded. But she trusted Mark completely. He was her protector, her only friend in this lonely world. Suddenly, the ground shook, and a low rumble echoed through the cave. Stones fell from above, blocking the entrance behind them. Mark looked at the fallen rocks with worry. "We're trapped," he said quietly. Aliyah felt a cold fear creep into her bones. What if they could not escape? What if the creatures found another way in? Mark searched the cave quickly, looking for another exit. Aliyah helped by holding the light steady. After a few tense minutes, they found a narrow tunnel that led upwards. The tunnel was tight and dark, but it was their only hope. Mark went first, carefully climbing through. Aliyah followed. Squeezing through the small space, their hands touched briefly, giving each other strength. After what felt like hours, the tunnel opened to a small clearing. The sky above was dark but full of stars. They breathed fresh air and felt relief. But danger was not far behind. Mark looked around and said, "We have to keep moving." Aliyah nodded, her legs tired, but her spirit strong. As they moved through the rocky hills, Aliyah looked at Mark with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said. Softly, "For what?" Mark asked, surprised. "For saving me." She replied. Mark smiled gently. "I promised I would protect you," he said, "and I will keep that promise." But the planet was unforgiving, and their journey was far from over. The creatures might be waiting for them somewhere in the dark. Aliyah held Mark's hand tightly and whispered, "Please don't leave me." Mark squeezed her hand back and said, "I'm not going anywhere." They walked for hours, finding small caves to rest and little plants to eat. Aliyah learned more about this strange human. He was brave, kind, and full of hope, just like her. Their friendship grew deeper, built on trust and shared dangers. As dawn approached, they found a small river. The water was clear and cool. Aliyah drank eagerly. Feeling life return to her body, Mark filled his water bottle. Knowing they would need it on their journey, they sat by the river, watching the sky turn pink and orange. For a moment, the world felt calm and peaceful, but both knew this was only a pause between storms. The alien girl and the human had escaped danger, but more challenges awaited. Together, they would face whatever came next. Aliyah looked at Mark and smiled for the first time in a long time. Maybe this strange human was her new family. Maybe, just maybe she was not alone anymore. After escaping the dangerous creatures and the dark cave, Mark and Aliyah found a quiet place to rest. They sat beneath a large tree, its leaves whispering softly in the gentle breeze. Aliyah looked tired but determined. Mark could see the pain in her eyes, hidden behind her calm face. He wanted to understand more about her story, about the reason why she was alone on this lonely planet. Mark reached into his bag and took out a small device. He turned it on and showed Aliyah a picture of a family, parents and children smiling. Together, he pointed to the family, and then to her family. He asked gently. Aaliyah looked at the picture and then at Mark. She nodded slowly, but did not speak. Her eyes filled with sadness. She held her hands tightly together and took a deep breath. Then, in a soft voice, she began to tell her story. She spoke slowly, using simple words and gestures. Aaliyah's people had been proud and strong, living in a great city on this planet. But long ago, a terrible war had come. Many had fled or were lost. Her own family had left her behind because she was weak and different. They called her a burden and told her she was better off gone. Mark listened carefully, his heart aching for the lonely girl. He reached out and touched her hand. "You are not alone anymore," he said quietly. Aaliyah looked at him, hope shining in her eyes for the first time. She felt that maybe someone truly cared, but the pain was still deep inside her. She told Mark about the nights she cried alone, about the hunger and fear. She explained how she survived on her own. Learning to trust no one, Mark understood that. This was why she was so cautious, why she did not speak much. He promised himself he would do everything to help her heal. Mark shared some stories about Earth. He told Aaliyah how humans cared for family and friends, how they believed in kindness and second chances. Aaliyah smiled faintly, imagining a world so different from her own, a world where she might find a place to belong. Suddenly, a noise broke the quiet. Mark stood up quickly, scanning the trees. A small group of strange figures approached. They wore dark clothes and carried weapons. Aaliyah's eyes widened with fear. "Danger," she whispered, pulling Mark's sleeve. The strangers were bounty hunters, searching for the lost alien girl. They wanted to capture her and take her back to those who had abandoned her. Mark held Aaliyah close and whispered, "We must run." They hurried through the trees, trying to find a safe path. Aaliyah's heart pounded. But she trusted Mark to protect her. As they ran, Aaliyah looked back once and saw the hunters following. She felt a mix of fear and anger. "How could they want to hurt me?" she thought. Mark held her hand tightly. "We will fight if we must," he said firmly. "But first, we must survive." They reached a small river and crossed it carefully. The water was cold but refreshing. Aaliyah felt a moment of peace as she drank. Mark looked at her with determination. "We will find a place where you are safe," he promised. Aaliyah nodded, feeling strength in his words. That night, as they camped under the stars, Aaliyah told Mark more about her people, about their laws and traditions, how she had been judged unfairly. Mark listened and understood the weight she carried. He wished he could take away her pain, but for now, all he could do was be by her side to protect her and give her hope. Aaliyah looked up at the night sky and whispered, "Thank you, Mark." And Mark smiled, knowing their journey was only just beginning. The sun rose slowly over the distant planet, casting long shadows on the rocky ground. Mark and Aaliyah prepared to leave the lonely world behind. Mark had repaired a small spaceship he found hidden among the ruins. It was old and scratched, but it still worked. Aaliyah watched as Mark checked every part carefully. She felt a mixture of hope and fear. Leaving her only home was hard, but staying meant danger and loneliness. Finally, the spaceship's engines roared to life. They boarded the ship, and the door closed with a soft hiss. The stars outside sparkled brighter than ever. Mark guided the ship up through the atmosphere. Aaliyah held onto the seat tightly. She watched the planet shrink below them, a part of her heart stayed behind, but a new part looked forward. The journey through space was long and quiet. Mark showed Aaliyah how to use some of the ship's controls. She was a quick learner and fascinated by the technology. She touched the glowing buttons and screens. Mark smiled, happy to see her curious mind. But space was not safe. One day, their ship's alarm suddenly rang. Red lights flashed and a loud Noise filled the cabin. Mark rushed to the controls and saw a group of space pirates approaching fast. They were known for attacking travelers and stealing goods. Mark's heart raced, but he stayed calm. He prepared the ship's defenses and hoped they could escape. The pirates fired lasers at the ship. Mark maneuvered quickly, dodging the attacks. Aaliyah helped by watching the scanners and warning him of dangers. The ship shook and sparks flew from the walls. They were fighting for their lives. Mark fired back carefully, trying to disable the pirates without hurting anyone. After a tense battle, the pirates turned away and disappeared into the dark space. Aaliyah let out a breath she did not know she was holding. "Thank you," she said softly to Mark. He nodded and smiled. "We are safe." "For now," he said. Aaliyah looked out at the stars again. The universe was big and full of wonders, but also full of dangers. Days passed as they traveled through different star systems. Mark told Aaliyah stories about Earth and its people. He showed her pictures and videos from his device. Aaliyah laughed and asked many questions. She wanted to know everything about this new world. Mark was happy to share. And their friendship grew stronger. But Aaliyah's thoughts often drifted back to her own people. She wondered if they had found a new home, if anyone still remembered her. Mark noticed her sadness and held her hand gently. "We will find a place where you belong," he promised. Aaliyah smiled, feeling hope bloom inside her. One night, as they rested near a small moon, the ship's sensors detected a distress signal. Mark looked worried. "Someone needs help," he said. Aaliyah nodded. "Maybe it is our chance to help others like you helped me," she said. They changed their course and followed the signal. The ship landed on a barren planet where a small group of travelers was stranded. They had lost their supplies and were weak from hunger and cold. Mark and Aaliyah shared their food and water. Aaliyah talked to them gently, using the few words she had learned. The travelers were grateful and welcomed them warmly for the first time. Aaliyah felt the warmth of a new community. She laughed and played with the children. Mark watched her with a smile, happy to see her find joy again. But the travelers warned them of dangers in the nearby space pirates, storms, and wild creatures. Mark nodded, knowing their journey was far from over. As they prepared to leave the planet, Aaliyah looked at Mark and whispered, "Thank you for giving me hope." Mark squeezed her hand. "We will face the stars together," he said, and with that, their ship lifted off into the endless night. The journey through the stars was just beginning, but for the first time, the alien girl was not afraid. She had a friend, a protector, and a new family. The ship floated silently in the dark space, stars shining like tiny diamonds all around. Mark and Aaliyah had been traveling for many weeks now. Facing dangers and challenges together, their bond had grown strong, like family. But the universe was not always kind. One quiet evening, as they rested near a small, unknown planet, alarms suddenly rang in the ship. Red lights flashed, and a loud voice warned of an incoming attack. Mark's face grew serious. He quickly ran to the controls and saw a large fleet of enemy ships approaching fast. These ships were from a hostile alien race known for destroying anyone in their path. Mark knew this fight would be different and very dangerous. Aaliyah watched him carefully, feeling a cold fear in her heart. She had never seen Mark so tense before. "Mark, what will we do?" she asked, her voice trembling. Mark looked at her with determination. "We must protect each other, no matter what," he said firmly. Aaliyah nodded, ready to face whatever came next. The enemy ships fired powerful weapons, shaking their small ship violently. Mark fought hard, using every skill he had learned. He fired back with all his strength, trying to keep the enemy away. But the enemy was too many and too strong. The ship began to lose power, systems failing one by one suddenly. Mark made a quick decision. He turned to Aaliyah and said, I will stay behind to hold them off. You must escape and find safety." Aaliyah's eyes filled with tears. "No, Mark. I will not leave you," she cried. Mark shook his head gently. "Aaliyah, you are the future. You must live to find a new home and show kindness to others," he said. Tears rolled down Aaliyah's cheeks as she hugged him tightly. Mark activated the ship's emergency escape pod and helped Aaliyah inside. "Go now," he urged. Aaliyah pressed the button and watched as the pod launched away from the fighting ship. She looked back and saw Mark standing brave and strong. His ship facing the enemy alone, the pod traveled quickly through space. Aaliyah's heart ached with worry and hope. She cried softly, whispering, "Please be safe, Mark." The pod's screen showed the battle far behind her, Mark's ship fighting bravely against impossible odds. Inside the battle, Mark used every weapon and tactic to slow down the enemy. He knew he could not win, but he wanted to give Aaliyah a chance to live. The enemy ships grew closer and fired powerful beams. Mark's ship shook and burned, but he stayed strong, thinking only of Aaliyah. Back in the escape pod, Aaliyah closed her eyes and prayed. She felt a new strength inside her. Mark's sacrifice gave her hope and courage. She promised herself to never give up, to live for both of them. After many hours, the escape pod landed on a peaceful planet. Aaliyah stepped out, breathing fresh air and feeling the soft grass under her feet. She looked up at the bright sky and whispered, "Thank you, Mark. I will not forget you." Aaliyah knew the journey ahead would be hard, but now she had a new purpose: to find a home, to help others, and to honor the human who gave everything for her. Aaliyah stood on the green fields of the new planet, the soft wind brushing against her pale blue skin. The stars above twinkled brightly. Like the eyes of old friends watching over her, she felt a deep peace she had never known before. The journey had been long and full of dangers, but now she was safe. The people of this new world welcomed her with open arms. They were kind and curious. Eager to learn about her story, Aaliyah shared her past, the loneliness, the pain, and the kindness of Mark, the human who saved her. They listened with respect and promised to help her heal. Aaliyah smiled for the first time in a long time. She felt a warmth in her heart, like a new family was forming around her. Children played nearby, and Aaliyah joined them. She laughed and ran, feeling free at last. But she never forgot Mark's sacrifice. Every night, she looked up at the stars and whispered his name. His courage and kindness gave her strength. She wanted to live not only for herself, but for him too. The community helped Aaliyah find a new purpose. She worked with others to build a better home. For everyone, she taught the children about courage and hope. Her story inspired many to believe in kindness and second chances. One day, as Aaliyah walked through the village, she saw a small child fall and hurt her leg. Without hesitation, Aaliyah rushed to help. She remembered how Mark had protected her. Now, she protected others. The people began to call her the Guardian, a symbol of hope and strength. Aaliyah wore the name with pride, knowing it meant she was no longer alone. Though the memories of the past were sometimes painful, Aaliyah learned to let go of the fear and sadness. She embraced the future with open arms. The lonely alien girl had become a strong and loving leader. Her story spread beyond the new world, reaching far stars and distant planets. Many heard of the human who saved a forgotten alien girl, and the alien girl who grew to be a guardian of hope. Aaliyah looked at the sky one last time before resting for the night. She smiled softly and whispered, "Thank you, Mark, for showing me kindness, for saving my life and teaching me to believe again." The stars seemed to shine brighter. As if Mark's spirit was watching over her, Aaliyah closed her eyes, feeling the peace of a new beginning.